Well, welcome everyone, or those that are in. We've got a fairly big crowd tonight, so I might just give it a little bit longer and make sure everyone else gets a chance to jump in there. Welcome from wherever you are in Australia, in this beautiful country. I'm in Queensland at the moment, so unless you're in here, apparently you can't get in here because the good old Premier's got the borders shut, which is I'm not sure such a good thing. But anyway, what you'll see, so I'll just run through a couple of quick things while we're waiting for everyone else to jump in. The webinar tonight will go for about 45 minutes. And then at the end, I'm going to leave it open for some questions. So if you do sort of have, pen and paper there or something and want to jot down any questions that you have, it may be easier at the end for me to go through them. So, but if you do have a question that's pressing during the webinar, I'm more than happy to answer it as well. So in the top panel there, you should have a chat button that you can click on, and you should be able to then type in a, like a question within that chat sequence. Now, in theory, it'll come up, but if I'm in the middle of the webinar, I may miss it, so I do apologise, but I will keep glancing there to make sure from time to time if there's any questions. Otherwise, what we'll do is we'll go through, any questions at the end, and happy to do that then. So feel free to use that chat area. There is an opportunity though, for if you've got obviously more personal questions that you don't want to, raise on the webinar, there's a chance at the end to jump in later on, in the next week or so and do a one-on-one with me so I can go through any of that sort of stuff at the time. Okay. Righto, we're a little bit, I've got, in fact, I think that's just about everybody in there. So there's a good turnout tonight. So I've got most of you there. Fantastic, righto. So what we're going to do, we'll get started. Those that aren't in at the moment, we'll have obviously some more jump in later as they need to. Okay. Righto. So what I'm going to do is go through a series of slides, obviously, and expand on them. So as I said, if you haven't found that chat area, grab it. Feel free to type through a question as we move along. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the 5 steps, obviously, as it says here, to ensure that you retire comfortably. Now, within those 5 steps, I'm going to expand a little bit with a few examples of, exactly what I mean by it, just so that you understand and can follow me. But basically, I'm also going to show in that some of the tricks of the trade. So there are some little tricks and things that you need to know to be able to, set yourself up properly and make sure you've got the right structure in place. Essentially, I'm not tonight trying to turn you into financial planners. My aim is to try and give you enough knowledge so that you know what you don't know. Now, what happens is I find with a lot of clients, and I'll go through this shortly, but we've dealt with hundreds of clients, and a lot of them, it's quite dangerous when you don't know what you don't know. And that's when mistakes happen and people set themselves up in poor structures, and it is very, very difficult to undo. So my whole aim, if there's nothing else I get out of tonight, is I'd love you to actually then have an understanding of maybe what you don't know, and then you can ask the right experts to, give you a hand. Even though this is, there's one main area here, DHOAS versus RA, which is very defence orientated. I do, and I think there's a few tonight, at least about 10 people that are non-defence. The rest, the vast majority, are definitely defence. So, you'll obviously, enjoy that part of it. But for those that aren't defence, it's only a very short bit. So, bear with me. There is quite a lot there that is related to defence and non-defence. Okay, the usual disclaimer. I won't read that word for word, but basically what I'm trying to say there is that this is general advice. This is not something that I want you to grab and say, hey, this is for me, and go do it without getting some specific advice around your circumstances. So it's purely just to say, hey, I'm giving you some general advice and knowledge, but don't take this and apply it to yourself. Okay, so basically you can stay with me until the end. So it'll only be about 40 minutes from now. I have got a bonus giveaway there, which is the Ultimate Banking Guide for Defence members. It is relevant to non-defence members as well, for those of you that aren't, and it could save you thousands. So I'll go through exactly what's in that guide later in the presentation, so you can have an idea of what I cover in that. Okay, if you can, turn off, whatever distractions, I guess phones and things. I know it's hard. Most people are in their houses. If you're like me, I've got 4 kids running around. So yeah, do it the best you can. I'm actually going to kill my video from now, just so I'm not annoying you in the top corner. And I'll come back to you at the end of the presentation. So you can now just, I guess, concentrate on the slides, and we'll go from there. Okay, I want to cover firstly just a few points about why you're here tonight, sort of thing. So, and these are I guess, the four most common that we see. Because I've been doing this, well, since, so 14 years now, essentially. So the first one there is that you're unsure. So I get a lot of people that are really unsure about where to start. They're really unsure about if they can afford anything, how much it's going to cost. And that's the reason, I guess, that they're here tonight, is because of, unsurety. Sick of procrastinating is another big one. So I get people that go through that little cycle there, they procrastinate, then they feel really guilty, and then they start to panic, and then they make excuses, and then they procrastinate, and they just get caught in this little web. And eventually they're sort of getting to the point of saying, you know what, I'm sick of procrastinating. I need to actually do something. And education like this is that first step. There's others out there that feel that they're missing out. So, you feel like you're being a little bit left behind as you watch all your mates and friends go and get into property or shares or whatever it may be. And they're starting to build portfolios and get ahead. So you feel like you're sort of, being left behind a little bit. And the final one is you're afraid. And that's probably a big one. We do get a lot of people that are quite scared about it, especially in the, environment it is at the moment. And I'll talk a little bit about COVID, what effect it's had on our business and what effect it's had on the market that we've seen. But yeah, fear is a huge thing. In fact, fear and greed are probably the two biggest things that drive most markets in our planet, which, that's just the reality of life. So what I've got here is just a quick little summary of those four major points that we see when people are, why they're not actually acting. So if you want to jump into your little chat screen and type in 1, 2, 3, or 4, or you might even be a combination of, you might be 1 and 2 or 3 and 4, just to give us an idea of where you sit. So, 1 is you're unsure. 2, you're sick of sort of making excuses and procrastinating. 3, that you feel others are getting, ahead and you're getting left behind. And 4, you're afraid, that you're basically afraid of doing anything. So, so I've got a few of those coming through now. Obviously, I've got a number 4 from Phil, number 1, Josh is number 4. So there's a lot of people and that is a big one for us, that are obviously afraid. And the big part of fixing that is education. So that's good. Good to see the chat's working as well. So if you do have questions, interrupt me, and I'll keep an eye on that so that I can make sure that I get those answered in a timely fashion. I know. So again, out of those top 4 reasons that we have, no matter what your reason, I fully support you. Now, there might be people here for other reasons, and that's cool. Education is a wonderful thing, and I think it's a great thing that you've taken the time to sit here and, and listen and go through this. I know the first thing I've put up there, just a few pickies that I'm going to talk you through. So I'm going to start with a bit about my story first, just so that you guys get a background of, what I've done. I guess I'm one of those people that I don't like just talking the talk. I want to show that I've walked the walk, that I've actually done it. Being military, we're very much like that in mindset. I want to see how it's done, and see that someone's done it before me. So I was born and bred in Papua New Guinea. My parents split when I was quite young, when I was about 9 years old, and we didn't have a lot. We moved back to Australia. There was my mum and just my brother and I. And my brother's 4 years younger, so I supported him for a great, deal of that time, while mum was at work trying to, earn money and so on. So we, to get to sport or to do anything, I had to ride a bike to it. And I didn't have a tough life by any means, but I certainly had a lot of financial pressures on us that I thought, you know what, I don't want this to be my family when I grow up. So at the time, I remember probably midway through high school, thought I'm going to go as hard as I can in education and make sure that I don't end up like this. Now I did really well. I ended up with God, what did we call it? A TE score, I think back then. I had like a 97% or something. So I'd worked so hard to get to that point, and I thought, this is going to change my world, and this is how I'm going to fix it. So I went to uni. I got into engineering at Sydney Uni, and I basically did nearly 15 years of straight university and study that I've done over the last 20 years or so. But I did a 4-year engineering degree. Now the issue was I went to Sydney. I had to hold down a job to try and get myself through uni, and by probably about midway through my 2nd year, I ran out of money. And sadly, that was the point where I thought, this is not good. I've got to finish this degree. So I had a really good mate who was in the army at the time, and he said, mate, why don't you just join the army? They'll pay for your degree and they'll help you get through. And I wasn't a huge fan of army, but I thought, you know what, that is a great idea. So I joined the military then in 2nd year uni. They helped and paid for me to get through the final parts of uni. And then obviously I then returned some service to them. So I started as a RAMI officer. And within a few years, I transferred across to aircrew. So that picture on the left is a PR shot that we did in East Timor. I did about 9 months over there on a tour, just doing reconnaissance type missions. So what I then did from there is, once I was in the military, and I'll go through my qualifications, shortly, but I essentially then thought, well, hang on, I've got to keep qualifying. So in East Timor, I did a Masters of Business. I kept trying to do all this training. And it wasn't until I got back from East Timor in about mid-2000, and we were deployed to the 2000 Olympics. So I got home for about a week, and we took all the aircraft down to Sydney and operated out of Richmond Air Base. And the time that we were there, we just basically carried senior officers around Sydney. But I remember one day flying with one of my mates, and we were talking about property and how we can do something and how do we get into it. And we're flying over Sydney, and I looked down and I looked at Sydney like a big Monopoly board. And I thought, you know what? Here I am doing a Masters of Business now, trying to learn all about finance and, and try and get a grasp of it. I thought, I just got to get in the game. I just have to get in the game. Like, it doesn't matter how much education I do. If I'm not in it, I'm not going to win. And that's probably my light bulb moment that I realized I had to get into the market. So I'll go into a bit more of exactly what I did in a second. So that top photo, obviously, pretty clearly is my wife and I and my 4 kids and our dog. And then the bottom photo there is our office. So there's obviously, my wife runs the office. I tend to sort of float in and out. Then I've got the 4 staff that run it all. And I'll go through that shortly in terms of our real estate office and what we have set up. So just a quick summary. I did obviously the Bachelor of Engineering that I spoke about. I did the Masters of Business, part of it anyway, while I was in East Timor. I then did a financial diploma, and I was a financial planner licensed for the last 10 years, and I gave up that license last year, which is a long story, but essentially I don't need it. So it was something that I kept, but wasn't really required. And then I've also got a Cert 4 in finance, so that I can talk to you about, offsets, redraws, and all those different things. I've been 14 years in business now. I achieved home ownership in 15 years, and I'm going to show you how in the next slide. We've assisted hundreds of clients. So to give you an idea, not all of them we can manage their properties, but we manage about 350 properties now across the 4 staff. And I'll talk to you about how COVID has affected that and what it's done to our landlords and so on. So, and the final point there, obviously, I'm a licensed real estate agent and the principal of our real estate office. Okay, so this slide here, this is, we have a few, obviously business partners that we work with. One of the builders that we work with built this for a owner-occupier, beautiful home. And basically, that's the same standard that we set for our investors as well in terms of the quality that we produce. So I put here, imagine if you could own it in 15 years, no more mortgage and rent payments. So the 2 biggest things you're ever going to have in your life, they're going to be outgoing in terms of payments. It's going to be a mortgage or rent, or probably both at some stage in your life. So my aim with all my clients is to try and get rid of mortgage and rent as soon as we can. So I'm going to show you the quickest way, and that's why I managed to do it in 15 years, the quickest way to get there. It doesn't mean it might be the way that you want to do it or the best way, but it's certainly the quickest way to get you there. Okay, so back to my story, flying over Sydney, 2000 Olympics. I reckon I nearly landed the aircraft, I think it was about October or something in 2000. And I landed, rang my girlfriend at the time and said, we're buying a house. And I reckon literally within about 4 weeks, we bought a block of land on the Sunshine Coast for 85 grand. Construction cost was 180. And so total cost 265. And that's some photos of the property up there that you can see. I then had, because, it doesn't feel like a lot now, but back then in 2000, $250,000 was a lot of money. And I remember feeling like, oh, God, that's a lot. And it was a big step. So it took me 3 years before I built the courage to go for the second one. This was a unit in Port Melbourne, in Melbourne, and it was basically halfway between the Yarra and Port Phillip Bay. So great location, had everything at its front doorstep. When you'll see in a minute the figures for units, it didn't do really well, and I'm not a huge fan of units. They are an easy investment in terms of, you can buy them, off plan, which again, I'm not a real fan of, but you can buy them, constructed and already built, but they just seem to get flooded by more units. So you just don't seem to get the capital growth that I'm chasing out of them. So I'm not a fan of them, but I did have one in my portfolio. And the third one, which was literally 12 months later in 2004, I bought a block here, 1,000 square metre block on the Gold Coast, and basically put a house on that. So you can see the prices there, 218 and 288. So it was about 500 grand for that setup, which was quite a big home. In today's environment, 1,000 square metre block is a massive block. So I'm going to run through with you how it all looked. So they're the purchase prices, 2000, 2003 and 2004. Obviously over to the right-hand side, you can see the values. Now this was about probably 12 to 18 months ago when I pulled the values off RP data. But as you can see, in those values from where they were about 18 months to 2 years ago, the total profit sits at about $745,000. Now, I've then applied capital gains tax to that. Now, when I did sell, I've still got one of those properties, but when I sold two of them to actually purchase my own home, I looked at some prepayment of strategies of reducing capital gains tax. Now, I don't have time tonight to go through that. I'm only going through a few things, but that strategy can mean that you can save capital gains tax. But in this example, I've actually said that I pay a full lot of capital gains tax, which is about 150 grand. And that still means that I had about 600 grand in the hand. So basically, I went out and purchased my own home, which was about 2 years ago now. So we now live in our own home, rent-free, mortgage-free. So that's essentially, I know it was fairly aggressive in terms of getting 3 properties, but in today's interest rate environment and the way the market is, they really almost make money to hang on to. So it's certainly something that, is a good strategy to look at. I'm going to have a quick chat with you about COVID-19 and what it's done. So the first point, there's landlords and what we've done for them. Now I'm going to talk to you firstly about our current landlords, and then I'll have a chat about the ones in the pipeline that are coming through. So with our current landlords, when the PM made his big statement that, basically no tenant will get evicted due to COVID-19, it did cause hell for our real estate office for about 3 to 4 weeks. Having said that, I commend him on what he said. He did need to, say something to provide some confidence to the market. But it took about 4 weeks for the state governments to bring that out in legislation. So for a while there was a bit of panic. We basically said to our landlords and our tenants, do the best you can. None of the rules and regulations have changed. You still owe rent and you'll still get breached and all those things. When the actual detail came out, we then found out that we were able to ask our tenant for proof of loss of job and loss of income and whatever else it was. So when we had, say, 30 to 40 out of the 350 saying they couldn't pay rent anymore, as soon as we asked for proof of that, we lost about 30 of them that suddenly said, oh, actually, I can't really prove it. And they were basically just trying to stop paying rent. So that dropped us down to about 10. Then of those 10, we worked through for the next probably week with them, and it dropped down to the reality of 2 people. So out of 350, we had 2 people that had genuinely lost their job that we were working with to try and assist and find a solution. Needless to say, both of those tenants are still paying full rent. We've managed to assist in giving them the paperwork they needed, to whether it was for job seeker, job keeper, or for the rental assistance grant. So in reality, out of our 350 properties, here we are now, 4 to 6 weeks later, and we've got no issues at all. We've got no vacancy and we've got no problems. And we're even advertising for rent houses, and they are probably renting within 4 to 5 days really quickly. So we've got no issues at all in the market from that point of view. With our landlords in the system, and what I mean by is investors that are coming through, what I did say to them is that we're going to put a hold on things. So we haven't actually put a new investor into the market for probably 6 to 8 weeks. We're literally holding because I just want to see, even though my belief is that you hold property for 20 years. So we're not trying to time markets as such. We just want to get in our asset and hold on to it for, 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it may be, to get some growth out of it. But what we have found is that if we can get an opportunity, i.e., if the market at the moment is at a low and we can get, some sort of benefit, then let's wait and let's grab that. So there are quite a few deals starting to come through as the market slows. The other one is the government assistance package that could be coming. So to build a new home, we may be able to get, and access some government benefits. I'm super keen to try and see what that is, and I'm hoping there'll be an announcement, later this week, if not early next week. And then we're looking at probably, with all those clients that we have sitting waiting, probably looking at then starting to go out and do some deals with developers and so on, as to try and then get them into the market. So that's the landlords. Tenants. Now, tenants are just as precious to us as our landlords. So we have done a lot with our tenants to try and assist them. We're there the whole time, but essentially they've all managed to get access to job keepers, job seeker, and most of them are in a fairly good place now. So, but we again communicated through our rental office with all of those people along the way. So the effect on the property market now with COVID-19, short and long term, it's hard to know, and I don't think anybody knows the real answer. But looking back at history, probably one of the biggest things that happened in our lifetime was the GFC. And I remember everyone saying this will be the biggest economic thing you'll ever see in your lifetime. Well, we've sort of surpassed that now. But during the GFC, people were talking about 50 to 60% drops in property. There were people talking about, only 10% drops in property. There were positive people saying the property is going to go up. I tend to sort of take out all the noise at the left and right end of each conversation and maybe go mid-ground. So same again in this. I think we're probably going to see a real estate drop maybe anywhere between 3 and 8% is what I'm sort of reading and feeling. But I think that's going to be very short term. So with the GFC, what happened as well is people said, oh, my house is worth half of what it was. But I would argue that it wasn't even worth half of what it was because there were no buyers. So for a period of that GFC, and I think it was about a 4-month period, there were no buyers in the market. So our rental offer or our real estate offers, it doesn't matter what we listed for sale, there was just nobody there. And when they did start coming back with confidence, the pricing was pretty much back where it was. And I think we're going to find the same. And it's very hard to know because if we get a vaccination for, coronavirus or COVID-19 in the next 6 months, the market could open up completely. But if we never get a vaccine, then it's going to be a really slow sort of growth and burn. So what it does present, though, is a great opportunity for those people wanting to get into the market because it's a very good time to be then trying to get in, knowing that interest rates are low and they're going to be low for a long time, and you're going to be holding the asset for a long time as well. Right, that's probably enough on COVID-19. I haven't seen any questions yet, so I'll assume you're either writing them down furiously and going to hit me at the end, or you're going to chat with me privately later on and we can go through any questions anyway. Okay, let's get into the steps of growth. These won't take too long. I'm going to sort of step through them. There's a few key points that I want to cover in a couple of them. So step one, wealth comes from decisions that are acted upon. So that's pretty obvious. If you don't do anything, nothing's going to change. So there's a stat out there that 64% of Australians will retire without any money. So, and there's another stat I think that said that something like 81% of Australians will run out of money before they die. So they're fairly horrific stats that you sort of look at and go, geez, are we in a third world nation? Like that should not be the case. So my aim with all my clients is to build enough wealth that you've got the finance there to retire comfortably. The second point, they're converting time for money. What I mean by that is if you go to work and you get paid and you come home, it is really, really hard to build wealth off that. What we need to do is we need to find some way of growing wealth in the background or some assets that you can then have that are working for you while you sleep. And for those who are on PAYG, property is a very good way of doing that. Third point there, hope things will work out. It's quite funny. I have a heap of clients going, oh, no, I hope it'll be all right. And I go, well, hope's not really a strategy. We need a strategy, and then the final point there, like, decisions become from people who act upon things. That was pretty much me. And that's why it's a big point for me, is because that light bulb moment flying over the top of Sydney when I thought I've just got to do something, I reckon that's changed where I am today, was that decision. But I'm going to talk to you about time. I want to cover the importance of time and what it means. Now, this graph, I'm an engineer by background, as you saw before, so I love graphs. The problem is, in reality, graphs are never straight line. So let's just say here we are today, you buy a $500,000 property. If it grows at 8% a year, it'll be worth 1.58 million in 15 years. Now, the first thing I want to chat to you about is this 8%. A lot of people used to talk about property doubling in value in 10 years, and that equates to about an 8% capital growth rate, like a compounding interest rate. I think those days are gone, and I think they left us about probably 10 to 15 years ago. I honestly believe that we're probably closer to about a 4% capital growth rate. I think that's a more realistic planning figure. I even am using 3% for some of the figures that I do for clients, but I think that's a far more, realistic planning model. I don't think that's going to change because inflation is so low. I don't think until you see inflation get back up above 2% and head towards 4%, I don't think we're going to see that move. So still though, if you bought a $500,000 property today in 15 years, it's made 400 grand. Now, if that property in the current interest rate environment is paying for itself or even making you a small amount, you're basically, building 400 grand over 15 years by doing nothing. All your take home pay at work, you still go and live life with and do your own thing. Now, the problem is in my graph here, this is a lovely straight line, as you can see, from the 4%. The world and what we live in does not operate in a straight line, because if it did, it would be really easy. I'd say to you, buy today. Today is the best day to buy because it's only going to go up every other day. The problem is it goes like this, up, down, up, down, up, down. Now, it does obviously still trend up by 4%, but the issue is the up and the down creates human emotion. So what quite often happens is when it's going down, which arguably it is now, people have got so little confidence that they don't want to do anything. Even though if I showed you a graph and said to you, when's the best point to buy, you'd go, okay, down the bottom there. The problem is when it's down the bottom there, confidence is so low and people are so fearful and scared that they don't want to act. But then they wait until they see that positivity. But by the time we see it, it's almost too late and we're back on the next high and people go, I don't want to buy, it's too expensive. And what ends up happening is we just lose time while we sit and wait. So my big thing is I say to people, don't try and time the markets too much. Just get in when you're financially ready. So when you are physically, financially able to me is probably the best time to go in. Now, I just wanted to show you, and this is obviously, again, straight line theory. If you delay and wait 5 years and then you purchase, you can see the 4% growth rate means that you've lost 160 grand. Now that's 160 grand in straight line theory. It might only be 100 grand if you bought in a down and an up or whatever, but it might also be 250 grand if you happen to time it wrong. So my point is if you're ready and you have the finances set to do it, I'd be looking at structuring and entering the market. Don't worry too much about the timing. Having said that, now is probably one of the better times. No questions on that. I'm going to grab a quick drink while you guys have a quick read. This is a client of ours from about 2 or 3 years ago. Really lovely girl. So yeah, she essentially, I think, was very excited about the property and was quite keen to move in because the properties that we do are, fully ducted. They've got alarm systems. They've got music systems in ceilings. They're fairly specced up. So even though we said to her it'd be far more expensive for you to live in it, I think she was quite keen to. Okay, I'm going to jump now onto, the point here. So after all of that, my big question to people is, when are you going to start your journey? And I don't mean go start it today or whatever, but have a think about that and have a think about when it suits you and try and make a plan towards achieving that start date so that you can get into the market and start, building some wealth. Okay, this is it. I'm going to have some DHOAS and RA stuff coming up shortly. I'm just going to run through a couple of points here before I do. So step number 2, owning your own home is not the priority. I know that sounds completely against everything we're taught. What I'm saying by that is it may not be the priority in the first instance. It is certainly the priority long term. We want to get ownership of our own home as soon as we can so that we can get rid of rent and mortgages. So as I put there, it goes against our childhood teachings, but I'll explain why in a minute. The second point here, instead of renting a house, most of you have probably heard the saying, rent money is dead money. I heard that from my parents so many times that I thought, I want to actually find out if it's true. So what I did is I thought, well, if I'm paying rent money, but if I go buy a house, I've got a mortgage. Now, part of that mortgage is me repaying the money that I borrowed, which is fine. But a big chunk of that mortgage is me paying the bank interest for the privilege of borrowing that money. So I thought, well, hang on. So I pay rent to live in a house, or I go live in my own home and I pay rent to the bank to borrow their money. So that's why I then started thinking, well, hang on, which one's better? Am I better off paying rent for a house, or am I better off paying rent to the bank? And that's what, made me do some figures to have a closer look. So what I'm going to show you now is basically renting versus owning, and I'm going to overlay DHOAS and RA onto that so that for those defense people, you can see the difference. Okay, the conditions I've used, I know, interest rates at the moment, 4.5%, and you should be paying down 2.9 or less. I mean, rates are down at 2.2 now, but all that sort of stuff I'll go through a bit later. We borrow 100% and we pay interest only. So I'm trying to keep it really simple. I don't want to put deposits in and I don't want P&I confusing. And I want to just look at interest only because I want to look at the real cost of the actual asset, not, the principal that we're paying back. Okay, let's assume we've bought our own home here and it's worth 500 grand. Now the loan repayments on a 500 grand loan at 4.5% are 22,500. I've included some rates and insurance in there, and I've included a bit of pest control. These are costs that you would encounter on your own home, but these are also costs that you're going to encounter on an investment when we get to that as well. So they'll also be included. So as you can see, the total is nearly 26 grand, which is nearly, call it $500 a week. So remember that figure, and that figure will come up later. So to go live in our own home, the 500 grand is going to cost us 500 bucks a week. Now this here, don't get too lost in all these figures. I've highlighted the key ones. This is just a software program that most investment companies subscribe to and can get access to, but it is quite handy. It does do projections. It takes into account your tax position. It takes into account your salary, everything, and basically puts it in to all your deposit levels and all that sort of stuff. We can look at your interest rates, capital growth rates, the whole lot. So the key points I want to highlight here is that we're looking at a 500 grand property up the top. We're looking at a 4.5% interest rate. So we're looking at exactly the same model as the owner occupied version. I've said it'll rent for $450 a week. In reality, it would probably rent for closer to 500. So these figures would look even better, but I'm trying to be conservative. So I've put it down as $450 a week. I've also put a vacancy rate in there of 3%. That's why the total rental income is $22,698, sort of an odd number. The interest rate at 4.5%, same as the home, it's going to cost us $22,500 in interest. And then you'll see that the rental expenses, so in that is my $3,000 for rates and insurance and my $400 for pest control. But on top of that, I've got another $3 or $3.5, grand or so of expenses because I've got management fees and all the other associated costs around getting your property managed and looked after by an agent, let fees and etc. So as you can see, we've got about 28,000 odd going out. We've got about 23,000 coming in income. So we're minus 5 grand a year. Then we look at depreciation of fixtures and fittings in the building. We've assumed that you earn 75 grand a year, so you're on a lower tax bracket. And then in today's environment, it's even better than that. But you can see the property's making you $14 a week, and that's at a 4.5% interest rate with no deposit in it. So obviously, if interest rates come down and you put some sort of cash deposit in, that number gets even higher in terms of your income. But so all I want you to take from that is that the $14 a week is what it costs, or what it's making you, to own this investment. So let's now have a look at these two examples here. Well, let's start with the home, and we're going to overlay DHOAS. So if you remember back, obviously the home was going to be $498 a week to live in. Now DHOAS at the top tier level for a 500 grand loan is around $100 a week. I know it varies depending on interest rates, but that's where it sits about now. Now, the next point I've said is it's $40 a week after competitive rates. And I'm obviously not sure how many of you have got DHOAS loans in place, but when you go to one of the three lenders that will offer the DHOAS loan, you'll see that, and I'll use NAB as an example. If you go to NAB and you ask for a DHOAS loan, they'll probably tell you it's about a 3.4% interest rate. Now, if you went to NAB and just said, hey, I just want a home loan, the best competitive one you can give me, you'd probably get 2.9. So what I'm saying there is that even though you're getting DHOAS, you're actually being disadvantaged by possibly 0.5%. Now, I've done some tests on it across the three lenders over a period of about 6 months just to see how it varies. And it seems to be anywhere between about sort of 0.3, 0.4 out to about 0.7% that the difference is. So what I've done is I've averaged that and said it's about $60 a week that we are losing by accessing DHOAS in terms of a competitive rate. So what that means is that in reality, DHOAS is only giving us about $40 a week after those competitive rates, which is another reason why, and I'll explain this in a minute, I would be keeping DHOAS as credits against your service, and I'd be trying to use RA as much as you can whilst you're in the service, because RA you don't get credits for, but DHOAS you do. So if we apply the benefit of $40 a week, which is roughly what we're getting, our $498 drops down to $458. So that's what it'll cost for us to have our home and access to DHOAS to live in it. Now let's go to the other side and let's have a look at the investment and RA option. If we go and invest in a $500,000 home, as you saw from that cash flow, it was about $14 a week that it's making for us, which is here. So if we now add in RA, so you go rent, and I know RA varies from city to city and posting to posting, but on average, most people tend to pay about $500 a fortnight or $250 a week. So if we use that as our figure, then we can take off the 14 because we're paying $250 out, but we're getting $14 a week back in. But the actual total cost for us to stay in RA and own an investment is $236 a week. So if we then look at the difference here, that's $222 a week, nearly $12,000 a year difference by going investing in RA as opposed to going home ownership and DHOAS. So don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say to people, don't go home ownership and don't go DHOAS. There are circumstances I know where people try and time a posting to access it, but it is fraught with danger because if you end up stuck in that posting locality for a bit longer, you're bleeding 12.5 grand a year. So even if you get a first homeowners grant of say, 15 grand, within a year, it's cost you 12 more and you've nearly burnt that up. So, it's another consideration to look at when you're looking at all those things. Now, actually, I've just noticed I've had a question come through. What happens to DHOAS defence credits that are banked up later down the track? How can they be used? Oh, yeah, good question. So, Phil, what that means is that at the moment in your service, you are getting credits for the time you serve that sits against you. So, for example, you've got to do 4 years for a qualifying period, then 4 to 8 and 8 to 12 is your tier levels. If you do, say 16 years service and then you discharge and you've got, 12 years of credits there, you have a 2-year window to access your DHOAS entitlements post-discharge. So if you fully discharge, they give you 2 years to resettle somewhere in Australia, and then you can apply. You might buy a home and then you apply for DHOAS at that point. But if you don't discharge and you actually just transfer to the reserves, which a lot of people do, you actually still maintain those credits and you don't have a time limit on when you can use them. So what I would be saying is that if you want to get the best benefit out of defence, is let's use RA while you're in and serving, and let's let DHOAS build up in the background. And that's essentially, I would have done that myself, but in the time that I was in defence, DHOAS didn't exist. So it wasn't an option for me, but it's certainly the best option that a lot of clients are doing now. Thanks for the question, Phil. Good question. So if there's no more questions on that, I will jump onto the next area. Okay, so I just put up another slide to prompt your brain. So who's looking at home ownership differently? And what I mean by that is that we still want to get to full home ownership as quickly as we can. But that's not necessarily the old way of let's go buy the home, sit in it and pay it off over 25 or 30 years. You can get there quicker, and there are better ways of doing it and using the entitlements, especially for defence people. But even for non-defence personnel, which I know, as I said, there's about 10 or so of you here, I essentially discharge from defence. And when I discharged from defence, I then was essentially a renter, and I rented whilst I still built wealth because I discharged in 2006 and only, bought my own home 2 years ago. So there was a period of about 10 years there that I was still, or even more, renting in the open market. And it was definitely a strategy for me that worked extremely well. It also helped that at the time, when I discharged, I only had 2 kids, and then I had 3, and then I had 4. So my changes were happening all the time in terms of what I needed for a family. And it was so much easier just to rent another house rather than have to sell and cop stamp duty and all those extras. Okay, move on to step 3 now, the risk, the secret to mitigating risk. This is a huge one. Risk is a major thing that, we want to make sure that we reduce and we control, because obviously we want to, gain as much as we can out of our assets. So the first point I put there is reduce time pressure by entering the market as soon as you can. And what I'm not saying by that is I don't mean, go out tomorrow and go buy a house. There's no rush in terms of investing. Take your time and make sure you're comfortable with what you're doing, but don't take 10 years because if you're and I have some clients that come to me in the military and civilians for that matter that are, in their 50s, and they say, hey, I think property is the way to go for me. The big issue I have is the time issue. Property needs time to grow. If you start trying to make money out of property in a 5 to 10 year window, it becomes riskier. So my point on that first one is that reduce the time pressure by getting in as soon as you can and then allowing it, the time that it needs to grow. Evaluate your financial strategy and ensure that it's affordable. So what we don't want to do is bring on all these properties or bring on investing at the detriment of your lifestyle today. A huge thing is you must maintain the lifestyle that you want and that you deserve, rather than trying to, I guess, set yourself up for 30 years time and actually wrecking your lifestyle, now. So a part of what I do with my clients is we just make sure that we're not impinging on anything that you're currently trying to achieve or do. Vacancy risk is a huge one. So we've got 350 that we manage at the moment. We have such a minimal vacancy rate. In fact, I would say it's basically zero, because every time one of them moves out, another one moves back in. And a huge thing on that is location and quality. I don't apologize for going blue chip. Yes, you can go to, some investment areas, and I'm not going to mention names of some of those locations, but yes, they're cheaper. Yes, the land's cheaper, but the quality of tenant you get and the type of, I guess, care on the property is not what I would expect. And it's the same with the share market. I probably wouldn't be going, low cap, cheap shares, at 5 cents each, hoping they're going to boom. Most people will go for your blue chip type stuff as an investment. If you're, a casino type person, then yeah, you might throw some risk at a really cheap one, hoping it's going to go up, but you don't want to put your retirement on that. So you make no excuses. We do go for quality and location, which protects you and protects your asset. Insurance. Insurance is massive. We will not actually manage our clients' properties until they have not only building insurance, which you must have anyway, but landlord protection insurance. If you don't have landlord protection insurance, we almost will not take you on, because we want the protection there that if a tenant decides to maliciously damage the home, or they break their lease, or COVID-19 hits, all of our tenants had rent protection in place. Now, a lot of the insurance policies are obviously now putting clauses in for pandemics. So, anyone now investing moving forward, it's going to be a little bit different. But for all those people that were in, certainly not an issue, and they were going to be covered. And the final one there is increase your flexibility. So I just want to throw in I haven't gone through too many technical subjects tonight because I don't want to bore people, but this is one that I think is really important, and I want to cover off really quickly for you. Okay, so there's two types of facilities that you can get with a bank. You can get a redraw and an offset. Now, a lot of bank managers or people that work in the banks will tell you that they're the same thing. It's a lot of rubbish. They're two totally different things. That's why one is called a redraw and the other one is called an offset. And I'm going to explain how they work and why they're different and how you can use them to your advantage. So let's have a look here. We've got a redraw on a $400,000 loan here for an investment property. So let's assume, so this is an investment. So you then go over to Afghanistan, or you go to Keno and you win Keno, and you come home with $200,000, and you decide to, well, before we do anything, let's pay a big chunk off the investment loan. So you throw it into your investment loan, you pay it down to $200,000. Then in the next 2 weeks, you go, oh, actually, we'd really like to buy a new car. So what you do is you go back to the bank and you say, actually, we'd like to redraw 50 grand of that 200 we just put in to go buy a car. Now the bank's not going to have an issue with that at all, because you had a 400 grand loan and now you're only going to have a 250. So they've got no issue because your servicing should be fine. So they'll give you the 50 grand, no problem at all. So from a banking perspective, the redraw acts exactly the same as an offset. But from the Australian Tax Office point of view, they are totally different. So the issue with what you've just done there is that because we had put cash into the loan and paid it down to 200,000, the cash no longer exists. So you have now got only a $200,000 loan against the investment that's tax deductible. When you go and redraw that money, you are now drawing a new loan, and the ATO, how they deem whether a loan is tax deductible or not, they look at the purpose for a loan. They don't look at the security. They don't care what it's secured against. So banks will look at security and the ATO will look at purpose. So even if you want to write that down, banks, security, ATO, purpose. So the ATO is going to look at you and go, well, hang on, you've just gone and borrowed 50 grand. And you'll say, yeah, but 2 weeks ago it was cash. They'll go, no, don't care. It's gone. It's in the loan. So now you're redrawing a loan. It's cash. Therefore, you get 50 grand is not tax deductible. Now, people then go, oh, well, what I'll do is when I get another 50 grand, I'll pay it back in. You can't really do that either, because what it's done now is, because you've got a 250 grand loan, of which 1/5 is not tax deductible, as you pay down this loan now, 1/5 of that loan for the rest of the life of the loan is going to be not tax deductible. you can't actually change anything to do with that other than now selling and realizing the asset. So as you can see, it's not a great scenario. So what I would suggest is a far better way to go is get an offset account. So what an offset is let's just say same scenario, 400 grand investment property here, and you go overseas or win Keno or whatever it may be. Instead of putting 200 grand straight into the loan, you put 200 grand into a savings account just here, and it's called an offset savings. CBA, I think, call it a miser account. And what it means is if you're paying 3% interest on the loan here, they will give you 3% interest on the 200,000 sitting in here. So what that means is if you're getting 3% for this 200 grand, it's just offsetting the 3% that you'd be paying here. So they don't actually physically give you any income at all. This just sits here, and all that happens is they only charge you 3% interest on 200,000 now, because that's the balance that's, still owing, so to speak. But the big advantage of this is that when you go to buy a car, just withdraw 50 grand out of your cash savings account. And what happens in the background when you do that is that this underlying 200 grand sitting here that's getting charged interest goes back up to 250. But it's still all within this loan facility. You have not touched or messed with this loan facility. So from the ATO's auditing point of view, that is fully tax deductible. You remain fully tax deductible, and you have the flexibility here to use this cash. Now, I know I've used a bit of a car example there. I'm going to use an example where you have a job in a location, i.e. a posting, and you move. So let's just say you're in, what's an argument? So you're in Darwin, and you've got a 500 grand home with a 500 grand home loan, and you pay it down. So this is a redraw. You pay it down, like you come back from Afghanistan or whatever, or you've been up there 10 years and you pay off $250,000 off this $500,000 place. Then you get posted. And what you say is, well, what we'll do is let's use a bit of equity out of here to use as a deposit, and let's go buy a new place over here. So you now get posted from Darwin, Sydney. Now you borrow 100,000 against here. But remember, even though the bank's giving you the 100 grand because it's secured against this property, remember the ATO, they look at purpose. So they see this 100 grand coming out and they go, what's the purpose of this 100 grand? Oh, it's a deposit for a home that you're going to live in. So therefore, the 100 grand deposit that you've just drawn out is not tax deductible, and nor is the 400 grand loan, which is the extra that you're going to have to take out to buy this 500 grand place. So basically, you've got a full $500,000 loan sitting on the house that you're living in that is non-tax deductible, and you've got only a 250 grand loan sitting up here in Darwin that is tax deductible. So basically, you're completely asked about. I'd prefer to have it the other way. But here, I'm going to show you the same thing again, this time with an offset. But what we do, instead of putting $250,000 into the loan, we set it in the offset account. But whilst you're living in the home, your repayments are reduced because you've got cash here. When you get posted, move the offset, you just connect with the new house that you're buying and you disconnect it from the old one. And now you've got only $250,000 worth of interest payable on here, which is non-tax deductible. And you've got the full 500 that is tax deductible over here. So what it's done is it's just put us in a far better debt position. Same debt level, but just a better tax position. So that's how, and there's so many other ways to use offsets and redraws, but that's just the basic way that I suppose help people with structures and trying to get them set up correctly. No questions on any of that? I'm going to have a drinks quickly. This is a really good client of ours. He's an air traffic controller, purchased through us probably a couple of years ago as well. I'll let you have a quick read of that. We'll have a drink. So really good guy. He's still down in East Sale actually, and I don't even think I think we've changed tenants once, and I think we had about 3 days vacancy or something. So yeah, it's been going really well for him. Great guy. So who's still concerned about risks? Are there any risks out there? And if there are that you're thinking, oh my goodness, he didn't cover a risk that I'm thinking is a real problem, feel free to jot it down on paper, or we'll have a Q&A at the end and you can ask questions about it, or send it through now if you want, and I'll go through it. Step 4, these last 2 steps are a little bit quicker. Who to listen to. You'll hear a lot of people say, do not listen to your family. I tend to disagree. Family are really important. And if you don't have family on side listening to you and, believing in what you're doing, then you may as well not do it. So I think family are extremely important to have on board. What I have said though there is that education is the key. So if family are going to be assisting you in making decisions and saying, hey, do this or don't do that, they need to at least understand from the education point of view what it is and how the figures work and how it looks. So I would just say when you are involving family, and definitely do, just make sure they fully understand as well. Because if I involved my family, meaning my parents, on what I did when I bought 3 houses in 4 years, they would have nearly had a heart attack. But if I explain to them now and they actually, see how I live now, it's like their eyes are open. They're going, oh my God, now I know what he was talking about. So their attitude has changed completely. The next point I put there is use multiple professionals if you can. So let's just say, and at the end of tonight, you'll have the opportunity to do a one-on-one with me. If I give you, I guess, some ideas and some concepts and do a health check and say, hey, this is what you could do, take those figures and take them to your accountant, take them to your planner, take them to whoever you want. It is really good to get a few different opinions of what you think you should be doing, and pulling them together to make sure that the plan you've got is the best plan for you and what you're trying to achieve. And I'm going to go over one quick topic in this, which is negative gearing. I did put / tax variations, but I'm actually going to drop one. What I'm going to do, I just want to talk about negative gearing, and the reason I do, it's a really basic topic, is that I get so many of our clients in their first meeting that their first question is, I'd like to get a negatively geared property. And I kind of go, well, hang on, I don't understand. So I want people to understand what a negatively geared property means. And I'm not saying don't set it up or get one that is negatively geared, because that does happen. But I would love positively geared every day of the week. And to be honest, in this current market, it's actually really hard to get a negatively geared because the interest rates are so low. Okay. I'm just going to, really simple one. Here's the cost of the house, the interest rate, and I know the interest rate's really high. Don't worry about that. 6.7%, 33.5 grand a year, rates and insurance. The total outlay for this particular property in this example is 38.5 grand. And that's on a 500 grand investment loan. Let's assume that investment property gets 500 bucks a week. So we've got 26 grand a year coming in. So in summary, we've got incoming on the left in green of 26 grand. On the right, we've got outgoing 38.5. You don't have to be a scientist to work out that we're losing 12.5 grand each year because our incomings are not covering our outgoing. So that is a negatively geared asset. So what does that mean? So if you're earning $80,000 a year, and you're in whatever job you're in, defense, whatever it may be, and they are taxing you at the taxable rate that you should be being taxed at, you're going to then find that you should be paying $18,700 in tax for that particular income level. If I'll just click across to the next one, you have your 12.5 grand loss. What happens is an accountant in the world, they look at it and the accountants will then go, okay, so my income was 80 grand. I've had a 12.5 grand loss. So really I should only declare 67,500 as my actual income. Therefore the tax payable on that is only 14,497. Therefore the 18 that I've paid, I take away the 14 that I should have paid. Therefore I'm going to get a tax return of 4 grand. And what you will find is a lot of property companies will talk to you about, hey, you should buy this asset. Have a look how good it is. You're going to get a 4 grand tax check every year. Wonderful. But you've got to remember that we just lost 12.5 grand to get that 4 grand tax check. So the real cost is not 12.5 grand a year, but it is still 8 grand a year. So to hold this asset in a negatively geared environment is costing you 8 grand a year. So there's nothing wrong with that, but we need to make sure that the property itself is growing more than that and making more money than that. And that's the whole idea. So I put there who listens to family, hopefully everybody, because I think it's an important part of the equation that you need to have. Righto, so come back to me if you're distracted a bit. I know I'm just about done. We've got step number 5, which is the rule of 3. It gives you enough exposure. So, and the reason I've gone with the rule of 3 is, and that's what I applied to myself as I bought 3 properties, is that if you buy one in the market, yes, you'll get growth, but the market's grown at the same rate as that property, which is fairly obvious. So then when you sell that property, you're still got to then go buy your home in the market that you just sold in, which means that you're not actually, you can't fully own it because you're going to have a debt level. So by getting the 3 properties, it allows you to build enough equity over that period of time to then own your own home. Here's a, I'm just going to grab a drink of water again. Here's a client, really good client of mine again, that's up from Darwin. And he did exactly what I did, 3 properties in 4 years. 2 are doing fairly well. 1 did extremely well, and I think he made about 150 grand over 3 or 4 years. Okay, so wrapping things up now. Obviously at the start, I sort of put in there, why are you here? You've turned up tonight, and I know for most of you, you're extremely busy. Most families are. And I do really appreciate the fact that people have taken the time to, increase their education. So why are you here? We talked about, that you're unsure about where to start, that you're sick of making excuses. You feel that others are getting ahead, and you're afraid, so you're afraid of not acting or not doing anything. Essentially, I guess it brings you to a point. You can go option 1, and that's where, you can stay where you are, you can be afraid, and, you can sort of be constantly thinking, what should I do? How should I do it? Or you can go option 2, where you go, you know what? Today's probably the day that I want to make a difference and I want to change. And I'm not saying go out and buy a property, but go to that next level and get more of an education and follow it through a bit further and make sure that you can control what you're trying to achieve. Um, this is a little bit longer, but this is a client of mine that literally just got her second property only probably about a month or 2 ago. It's worth having a quick read. She's a lovely girl, but she hasn't been around for any of the exposure at all. So basically, she is Army, but has been deployed on a naval ship. So I've done a lot of the work for her just via Zoom and different, means. And she managed to get up just before COVID-19 to have a look at her property. But yeah, we've looked after her, and I think she's ecstatic with the, the process and everything. So what I'd like to do is invite you guys to a discovery session. And I know there's quite a few of you here tonight. I'm not going to be able to, go through all of you within the next day or 2, but I'll show you what you can do to actually get on a discovery session. What I'm trying to do is we'll do a health check first. So the aim is to look at where you're at right now. Some of you might have properties already, some of you might not. If you do, we can do a health check on interest rates and different things and just see where you are. We can then have a look at some options for achieving home ownership. What's the best way for you to go? And there might be, 1 option, there might be 3 options, and we're going to have a look at the different things out there, how to cash flow for it, and how to get there as best we can. We'll then do some accurate figures, and then I'll, present those figures to you and go through them all. But the discovery sessions are normally, so if you jump on my website or, normally book through there, they're $249. I'm going to provide that as a free service for you guys tonight for coming along and giving up your time with me. The options and figures for, achieving home ownership, and we're going to do most of it via Zoom, obviously, because, with the current restrictions. Yeah, hopefully that'll change over time. I wanted to put that up there as a big slide. If I can do it, so can you. I was from a very basic upbringing. My brother and I, growing up with a mum with not much, and I've managed to achieve some amazing things with my portfolio to where I am today. I mentioned earlier about the banking guide. So if you do jump on the link I'm about to give you and you book in a session to do a discovery session, I'm going to give you a free banking guide for those that do it, in the next 5-10 minutes. In the guide, I'm going to talk to you about the 4-point checklist for negotiating the best interest rate on your current loan. So it just goes through some points that you need to ask and make sure that you do. The 5 considerations you must make to decide whether to go fixed or variable. There's a heap of people that sort of ask me all the time, should I go fixed, should I go variable? I'll give you the 5 things that you must consider, and the 3 ways to decide between P&I and interest only. And that's another thing that people ask, should I be P&I, should I not? And that's all covered in that guide. So as I mentioned, we're cutting the cost to free. Book in a discovery session. Now you'll see to book, you can see that the URL's down there. I'm actually going to type that URL for you to chat. Because I think you can just click straight on it and it will take you there. So you /call. So hopefully that'll come up for all of you and you might be able to just click on and you'll go there. You'll see when you book that session is, I've just got here, you're going to see that cover page is basically one of the main things at the start. And then when you go to the next page, it'll come up with my diary essentially. So you can select a day, go in there, a day and time that suits you, and it'll send myself and yourself a discovery, like a Zoom link. And then that Zoom link is what you can then click on when the time comes around to the actual meeting, and then we can have a chat online, and we'll go through a few questions and so on, and you know, set up a you know, a plan for you, or a way moving forward, sort of thing. So, and I know, you know, a lot of you might be thinking, oh, you know, I'm too busy, I'm not sure what I'm going to get, or I've already sorted, or you know, I don't understand finance and property, so I'm not interested. My thing is that if you want to go the next step, certainly you've got nothing to lose. You can take advantage of the free session. It's only free until this Sunday. So I'm only giving you essentially 5 days. Those that, as I said, jump on and book it in the next 5-10 minutes, I'll send you a personal copy of the banking guide. And those that don't, you'll have still until Sunday, should you wish to book in a session when it's free. And then after Sunday, it goes back to the $249. That's a discovery session there. Go to that URL, and we should be able to click on it, hopefully, in that, or paste it from the chat screen. That's basically the end of the session. I apologise, I've gone a little bit over an hour. I have got time for Q&A and stuff, or I've got time, as long as you guys are happy to hang in there and ask questions. While you're thinking of questions, though, if you want, or you want to throw some in, I'd normally start it with a question that I get quite often, which is about deposits. So maybe I will quickly go through that for you. In fact, I'll bring the camera back up on so that you can actually see me. That's better. So yeah, so I get one of the common questions I get is about deposit levels, and people normally ask, you know, what deposit level do I need to get into a property, sort of thing. Now, there's 3 methods for getting into a property. There is cash in terms of a deposit. There is equity in terms of, you know, equity from another home or another house. And there's a family guarantee, which is another one. Now, not many people use a family guarantee, but it is a really good way. I will certainly be doing that for my kids, but I can explain the equity and the family guarantee at a later time. But essentially with cash or any deposit, let's just say you had $250,000 for argument's sake, I would only ever put a 20% deposit into a property, because that avoids your mortgage insurance payment, and any other cash you have, I would be placing into an offset account. So I would not be committing any more than the 20% deposit. On the other end of the scale, I would probably be recommending at least a 10% deposit. You can go lower, but the mortgage insurance goes through the roof quite a bit. So what I would probably be recommending is 10% as a minimum. There would be a few circumstances that I would look at less, but probably not many. And essentially then anywhere between 10 and 20% is where we want to be targeting for our, you know, deposit level. We can obviously then use equity or a family guarantee to achieve that. But yeah, that sort of answers, I guess, the question around that. Just looking at the chat there. So I haven't got any questions from anybody, which is good, which means hopefully I've explained everything well. So thanks, guys. There was quite a big turnout tonight, and you know, I appreciate you all coming along and giving up your time. So if you do want to book a discovery session, jump on there in the next 5 minutes or so, and I'll flick you a copy of the banking guide, or you've got until Sunday to you know, jump on and book a session with me. But thanks again, and yeah, hope you enjoy the rest of your night. And there'll be some more webinars and things coming up. Oh, hang on, I've got a question. Super fund. So I've got one here from Shona. What about using a super fund? You can. I'm not a huge fan of accessing a super fund for the purchase of a property, but if we do a session together, I'll talk to you in a lot more detail about it. The reason I'm not is because the property is then owned within the super fund, and it does come with a lot of restrictions. So the aim for me with a lot of my clients is I'm wanting to actually build wealth with them in a time frame that they can retire early. Now, the problem with the super fund is if it's owned within the super fund, you don't have control over it. So, and there's limits and constraints on what you can spend on that property as well. So if it needs renovations, there's limits on what you can put in there, because you're only allowed to contribute a certain amount to the super fund. So it's not ideal. There was a huge push on them probably, what was it, probably 5-6 years ago. Everyone was going there because they didn't have deposits. Everyone's going, use your super fund, use your super fund. But I'm not a huge fan of it. But you may have particular circumstances that, you know, suit you, that you may require, and it may suit. So yeah, if you do book a discovery session with me, I'm happy to go through that with you a little bit more. So hopefully that answers the question. Thanks, guys. There's no other questions there. Thanks, Josh. Again, a few thanks, thumbs up. Phil, yeah, John, thank you. So have a good night, guys. And yeah, I'll be doing these probably once every month. So if you do have anyone else that you think could benefit from coming along to one, feel free to pass it on. Thanks again, guys. Have a great night.